I just emotionally cannot keep track of all of the murders that happen. We are not necessarily on some record-breaking pace, but with each passing story, it is still disappointing. And we are reminded of past incidents that have not really reached any closer to a resolution, even though it might be a year or two in advance. I'm speaking of the situation, the fallout of the death, the murder of PC Gilks. It was in recent news papers, and it just reminds us once again, you know, to what extent can we forget controversial issues, except the reason why we forget them is not just because it's an unforgiving 24-hour news cycle that keeps churning out more and more content to distract us, whether rightfully or wrongfully, but in a similar vein to that statement, there's just so many things to be concerned about, and to what extent should we prioritize one issue over the other? So we have a string of things to get through before we welcome the ASP this morning. Let's start off today's daily review. First thing I want to start off with, and again, this is a story that is controversial. Most of my callers, I think it's safe to say, disagree with me on this. It's a position that I don't care if it's popular. I think the principles that underlie it, yes, the circumstances might make it unpopular, but if we compromise here, to what extent will this set a precedent for other individuals' rights to be compromised down the line? Case in point, our nationals were locked out of the country during COVID while the borders were wide open. But speaking about people locked out of the country, with regards to the refugees in Syria, the opposition, the opposition did question the government with regards to that process. And the Prime Minister, he did, you know, basically support what the Minister of National Security said. Right. All that is not necessarily the point. The point that I want to reiterate again is, why is it taking so long? What is it about this situation? Because both the Minister and the Prime Minister more or less have said things that there are issues that need to be managed. That's why we need new legislation. It's a complex matter and has to be done in a way that balances the needs of the retainees with the needs of the population and national security. So what are these needs exactly? Usually I would present hypotheticals of what I think they might be. But to some extent, there is nothing that I could think of that would warrant it taking 5 years. Because at the very least, it has been revealed that there is a 3-man repatriation committee has been established to lend support to the government's efforts in this regards. The committee has received some support staff, and a property has been identified for the administration and management of retainees. So at least they've gotten to that point, right? These efforts continue to be supported by a group called Task Force Nightingale, which was established in 2018. So what's so 6 years, we're in 2024, right? So depending on which month of the year we're talking about, 6 years. What is the complexity that would require 6 years? I could see where it's complex, it might take a year. I mean, if we were efficient, it will take months, but I could see it take a year, 2 years, 3 years, 6 years. Now, one of the things that was revealed was, I believe by the Prime Minister, was he said, the task force includes representatives from the National Security Ministry, Office of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs, the Social Development and Family Services Ministry, and the Foreign and CARICOM Affairs Ministry. And he said that the efforts of these groups are also being supported by the Immigration Division, the Children's Authority, and the Strategic Services Agency. Which then begs the question, to some extent, is everybody doing their part? The SSA is embroiled in something right now where they potentially, because one would think that intelligence services would be the main way to check into the backgrounds of all of the situations of everybody that we're considering bringing back home. And I would assume that if you have any national security concerns, you'll be checking out the backgrounds of everybody to cross your T's, dot your I's, to make sure that when you bring them home, there are no surprises. And obviously, if there's any glaring red flags that would obviously preclude anyone from being brought back from a Syrian refugee camp, you would like to find that out in advance before you bring them back here, right? I don't know what those could be. I'm not saying that they are. I'm just saying that's the only part of the process that I am willing to, well, I could come up with any sort of hypothesis or speculation or make any assumptions for. But then, not too long ago, we found out there are issues within the SSA, and we now have to ask, how long do these issues take? So, let's move on. Speaking about the SSA, next topic. Prime Minister did come out and speak. Well, let me just say, with regards to what's going on in the SSA, he's basically saying that, look, there is no time frame for an audit into the Strategic Services Agency. He basically said that it would be inappropriate to give a deadline. Now, we know that the SSA itself, the new acting head, who was TNT's ambassador to the United States, Brigadier Anthony Philip Spencer, he is the acting head of the SSA now. And he is looking into some of the practices that happened throughout that time period. And he is looking, including into the fact that there are people who were sent on leave who he might look to bring back. So, to some extent, how deep does this dysfunction go? And is it possibly affecting, to some extent, it's not the whole effort to bring back the refugees, but what else is the SSA's audit affecting? Because usually, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you audit an entity, to some extent, it does not continue on business as usual. And the acting head, I mean, part of his job now is to conduct an audit, so one would assume that he himself is not free to just conduct SSA business. He is looking into certain HR practices, so to what extent can he trust that the personnel that he meets there is able to carry on business as usual while this audit is taking place. Sometimes when an audit happens, if it's a department of a business, maybe they'll transfer the responsibilities to either somebody in the department not being audited or to another department if possible, or they'll transfer people in from outside said department to carry out the functions. I mean, that's basically what happened here, right? They changed the head to do the audit because you're not going to tell the previous head who oversaw the issues that you have questions over. Hey, I want you to investigate how things have been going in the agency that you're running. You know? Investigate yourself. So then, initially I was wondering, when I saw that the SSA was part of the group supporting the efforts to bring back the refugees to Trinidad, I was wondering, first of all, to what extent has that continued, if at all, and then furthermore, the SSA is supposed to be the agency for signals interception, signals intelligence, etc., etc., etc. I mean, there were other SRPs. Were they for security? Were they to get confidential informants? SRPs aren't necessarily fully trained, but anyway, I don't want to expand further into that. Those who understand, understand. But to what extent is the SSA actually able to continue on its functions while this audit is going on? Has anybody else picked up the slack? Who is picking up the slack? What is the legal justification for them picking up the slack? Is it allowed in our laws for somebody else to pick up the slack? This is pertinent mainly because, I don't know if you notice, but we have a small problem with regards to crime, and at the very least, one could say the perception that the public has on crime, and to some extent the perception that the rest of the world has on our crime. I mean, it hit YouTube about 2 weeks ago, give or take. And I said that the acting head of the SSA was the United States ambassador, right? Our ambassador to the US in Washington. That leads to the next topic, topic 3. Because I get it. This is complex. And I took my knocks on Friday from Mr. San Fernando. To some extent, rightfully so, because I don't want anyone to think that I'm rooting for the government to fail. I actually want both the opposition side of the aisle and the majority government side of the aisle to do their jobs well. First of all, I would like at least one of them to do their jobs well, instead of average and or below average. But currently speaking, last we heard, the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Well, first of all, let's go to the Dragon Gas deal itself, right? Of course, the opposition came out. OFAC, they're not going to renew the general license, and the opposition has questions with regards to the Dragon Gas deal. Now, the Prime Minister, he basically said that, let me just get the, TNT was not immune to US-Venezuela dynamics. And apparently, no work has been done yet physically on the project, but that doesn't necessarily mean that no work has been done. So I don't necessarily, when people read that part of the article, don't panic just yet, right? But the Minister of Energy, Stuart Young, he also reiterated the point that, and he is quoted to have said, "I cannot give any assurances as to the matters that are wholly out of my control, but I can reassure the population that we continue to be very engaged with the US government and the decision makers in the US, as well as the government of Venezuela. We do have a 2-year license with OFAC. We have a 30-year exploration and production license with Venezuela. And technically speaking, our license is not in limbo. The situation in general is somewhat up in the air because one aspect of the exemptions, the license exemptions, is more or less being removed. But we would need, this is not a case where we just assume we're included and we back off. We need affirmative word from the US that they're going to include our license as well. Now, the Minister of Energy did say that we continue to be very engaged with the US government and decision makers in the US. Now, last I checked, our Minister of Energy / Minister of Everything and our Prime Minister, 2 of the people who have been quite engaged in our international energy affairs are in TNT right now. So who is conducting our business in Washington? Well, last I checked, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and CARICOM Affairs, Dr. Amir Brown, he confirmed about, let me just double check, less than a week ago, 5 days ago, the government is currently considering who to appoint as this country's ambassador to Washington. Washington meaning the American government. Right now, the charge d'affaires, the deputy is handling the matters, but to some extent, we don't have, in what could be one of the times when we need someone to really handle our stories, when the Prime Minister and the Minister of Energy and the Minister of Foreign Affairs are not there in person, to help ensure that the lines of communication run as smoothly as possible, that there's no uncertainty, there is no hiccups. I don't know how good our deputy is, but apparently he's not necessarily good enough to be automatically elevated to the post of ambassador. One of the reasons why the retired Brigadier General was brought down was because of how well respected and how basically how good he was. So to what extent did he have a role, maybe he didn't, in previous diplomatic negotiations with the US in order to get our deal. To what extent was he a part of it? Maybe he wasn't. But I don't know. Now does not seem to me to be the best time to not have an ambassador to the US while we watch the wild card known as Venezuela continue to do things that make us less than comfortable. Because, and again, Mr. San Fernando, this was more or less the point I was trying to make. That I understand that private interests, of course, if they're moving ahead, that is one indicator. But ultimately speaking, nobody could predict what Maduro is going to do. Because from my perspective, rational thinking would say, let's not make waves over Essequibo now. But he is not me, I am not him. I don't understand it. Maybe there's something that I'm not seeing. There was a theory that this whole Essequibo thing was more for his internal politics. He needs an issue to rally the country behind, to get behind him, to rally all their support on an issue, but importantly, that they would then support him so that his internal situation remains stable, or rather stabilizes if it needs to do so. So we are at the mercy not just of the international situation, Venezuela, Guyana, Venezuela, the US, Trinidad, Venezuela, and to some degree, Trinidad, Guyana, although we have said we support our CARICOM neighbor in their rights over their land. But we are also at the mercy of the internal politics of the United States and Venezuela. So hold on to your hats. As Karen said, do we have enough Manatee Dragon, other ventures? Is it enough? Well, to some extent, we also have to ask, is it enough without Dragon? Again, I don't want to see this fail. I just don't trust the situation in Venezuela first and foremost. And then American politics has gotten crazy. I don't know if you haven't noticed. And they have an election coming up. And politicians say and do the darndest things if they think it will help their election chances. Oh wait, Venezuela has one too. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we have a couple more stories left to get into. Stay tuned to Talk About on WAS, and we'll be back after this.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Coming soon to WESN.
Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really
respond to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I'll ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services,
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So here we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren. Coming soon to WESN.
Fan Zone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
This is Face of Sports WESN Content Capital. how you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
And I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break a balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put
Why
forever.
you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of the
not no.
Let's go to the last part.
Thank goodness it is I and not one of my directors who's on this side of the camera. That's all I'll say about that. The conversations off air sometimes are too hot for television. Anyway, moving on. There's one interesting story I don't want to spend too much time on, but I just wanted to bring this up because, well, I think this is somewhat important. I'm not necessarily stating what the resolution could be. I just think no one is really looking good. All of the stakeholders involved that are part of this. So, the government, they took a bill to Parliament to remove the oversight of appointing acting commissioner of police or deputy commissioners of police. And the opposition didn't support the bill. They did not want the oversight of Parliament to be removed. The opposition leader said that the bill would have omitted transparency and accountability in the selection of an acting COP and acting deputy COP. They needed 2/3 majority, so that basically means without the opposition, it's sunk in the water. The opposition leader said it's a victory for democracy as the government was unable to secure the 2/3 votes needed to pass the bill in the lower house. The thing is, she went on to say when the AG comes, MP Saddam Hussein said, when the AG comes, it can't be just speaking for 20 minutes and we support it. It goes back to some of the criticisms Dr. Sheikh Mohammed had, whereas it seems as though there's no the communication between either side of the aisle as to what the agenda is, why we're doing it, and essentially, I would think you would, to some extent, give your pitch to the opposition and say, this is why we're doing it, please support it, and then they could reject or maybe come on board and pass it bipartisanly. But I don't know to what extent that it's a victory for democracy. Right? Now, on one hand, I get it. The government is not necessarily looking its best in this situation, right? Because of the whole situation that happened before. Not only was there the meritless fiasco, then there was the acting situation with Gary Griffith. He was acting, then the court said he can't act. The AG said it was good law, then the court ruled, and then the AG said, well, I didn't actually write the law that I said that I wrote before the court ruled that it was not good law. Then AG at the time. The current AG is piloting this bill. Maybe it might be better written, I don't know. But let's not forget that not only has the government said that Gary Griffith was a great mistake, the greatest mistake of commissioner, they also behind the scenes apparently told themselves, hold my bear, and proceeded to what might be deemed by the rest of us make an equally bad, if not greater mistake with the next substantive commissioner of police they appoint. It's not like the government has a great track record. And the fact of the matter is, not having parliament oversight, a lack of transparency, I kind of get the opposition's points. This ain't gonna look good, right? Although technically speaking, the independence of the Police Service Commission is doubted by some. But let's not forget the opposition had Stephen Williams acting as Commissioner of Police for how long? And did that stabilize the situation? So on one hand, the process, I understand. The process, I am not ready to say that we should move away from parliamentary oversight. I don't necessarily see opposition always making use of their actual role of trying to make the government be better as opposed to trying to tear the government down and block everything that they do. But then another aspect of this that kind of bothers me, some retired and well, the president of the Social and Welfare Association, ASP Gideon Dixon, he's spoken out his disappointment about the opposition's rejection of the bill to be appointed as acting without parliamentary approval as a travesty. My question is why? I mean, he made some point. Sorry. The opposition is making the point that, you know, they're not aware of what's going on, but to some extent, I think it takes two to tango. But Mr. Dixon is saying that the Police Service Commission has been entrusted to appoint a commissioner of police. They should also be entrusted to appoint someone on a temporary basis. But they don't appoint. They make a merit list. And then that merit list is subject to parliamentary approval, whether it is for commissioner or deputy commissioner of police. So and then he says we cannot say it's an independent body that deals with the selection, and then when it's time to appoint, they're not afforded the opportunity to appoint the person who should have gone through the process to be appointed. Well, first of all, it's not as though the government is not going to have its say one way or the other, unfortunately. But again, that's the process. Politics will still be played with the TTPS. And I think this goes back to the president's assertions before about how he does not like candidates' name being dragged through the mud through the process. But to some extent, who is appointed as Commissioner of Police is of national interest. And if you can't deal with the scrutiny because, hey, secretaries in the American cabinet get dragged through a process, one could ask, rather, not that we should remove processes like this, maybe we should have more processes like this. Every minister should be under scrutiny, or the selection of candidates of ministers to be appointed. And then another retired police officer was basically speaking about the importance of the role, and I'm like, we're not debating whether or not we should have things in place to have an acting commissioner if we don't have a substantive one to hold on the fort. This is about the process. And I don't think we could trust less transparency. Because if you don't want officers who have given years of meritorious service to be dragged through the mud, maybe they shouldn't do things like what was done with regards to the not legal extradition of Brent Thomas, let's put it that way. Or how about, let's use the current Commissioner of Police as an example. How many of us could confidently say in a public forum that she has the job and the evidence is in her performance? One could argue that more bipartisan debate might be needed for these positions. But again, I'm not necessarily saying that the opposition is doing a good job at it. But what the process should be is regardless of the actual performance of the individuals involved. And right now, the Police Service Commission does not have the power to appoint. So let's not say that they should also have the power to appoint acting. The process is what the process is. If you have a problem with the whole process, then say that. And then you have to get it changed with some reasonable reasons. All right. Last thing I wanted to speak about, it has come back. This is one of those stories where I genuinely feel bad bringing it up because I have more or less brought it up for, I think, 5 days in a row, 6 days in a row now of airtime. And that is with regards to the situation going on with the NWRHA and the NICU deaths. Now, first off, the NWRHA is trying to say, listen, the other 4 deaths that have been discovered should not be included with the 7 deaths. To which I say, that's probably not for you to say. I'm not saying that they are automatically included and no one can tell me different. I'm saying that investigation should then determine if those situations are linked. And that is based off of many technicalities. I believe the team from PAHO is here. It's a 5-person team. I don't necessarily know exactly how far the investigation will go into, right? Obviously, if the bacterial infection is linked between the 7 babies initially reported on and the other 4 babies, then they are directly linked, or they might be indirect links if the situation is how the hospital has been managed and run in various dimensions, factors, etc. Or they might not be linked at all. In which case then, on an individual basis, these deaths need to be determined if they are, within reasonable expectations or due to unreasonable circumstances, whether negligence, etc., etc. Now, the head of the Nursing Association has come out. He has said that, of course, now, first of all, he said the doctor being put on leave, it seems as though he's being made a scapegoat, right? He has said that the nurses are devastated by the situation, the nurses in the NICU, right? Senior staff takes the praise when things go well, but junior staff takes the fall. And he's pointing to the fact why he says that is that, according to him, if there are 7 babies in the NICU, you need 35 nurses assigned to a unit. 7 registered nurses in the morning, 7 in the evening, 7 in the night. That's a minimum of 21 nurses per day with just those 7 babies. And then you have to have extras for days off, vacation, casual leave, etc. So he has brought forward questions over staffing issues at the NICU. But then, and then he's also, and this kind of goes with things that he's been saying since the pandemic and even before, with regards to specialized nurses in the field, as opposed to just using general nurses. And he asked if the head of, he called it an advisory role, right? Infection and Prevention Control advises the medical chief of staff and other parties, the head of the unit, etc., etc. But he cannot tell them not to take any more babies. He cannot tell them to change our procedures. He just advises them on that aspect. But how the facility is run, how the NICU is run, is not up to him. And I get that. But then on top of that, one of the mothers is a nurse herself. 42 years old, I believe. She's reported that this is basically her last attempt to have a child because she decided not to have any after this one and went through the procedure to do so. She has come out to complain about the attitude of the nurses. So on one hand, we have the MWRHA, and I didn't say this before, I apologize. They're saying, look, everything is fine, Port of Spain Journal is moving forward, the NICU is operational. Then the head of the Nursing Association has been saying, well, hold on, what are nursing levels up to scratch? And then do we have enough qualified nurses for such a sensitive field? But now another nurse is basically complaining about the treatment that she received from her fellow nurses. And what she looked at, the behavior, the performance of the nurses as now essentially a customer, right? in the situation. And I believe she said something to the effect of, she now understands complaints people have, the families and patients might have on medical staff. And she's even come out to complain that the fact that she has 2 reports from the General Hospital with different causes of death by 2 separate doctors. Now, they're not completely different. One is saying that there was the first one says sepsis, and then the second one said presumed sepsis. And she's also saying that when her baby was brought in, at first she thought that some of the other babies were sent home, and she was told that those infants were discharged when they got better, but apparently she overheard nurses saying that there was bacteria and that the innocent babies had been infected. And she has claimed that there were people going in and out of the ward, I believe by ward she means the NICU, without gowns and gloves. So she has made specific claims with regards to the entire situation not being run well, including the behavior of the nurses in the situation. She didn't necessarily like it. The head of the Nurses Association, he has also alluded to things that, from his point of view, the entire situation is not being run well by an HR and staffing perspective. And this is not just, an office is short-staffed, this is the NICU. But then now, just to wrap things up, first of all, and I made this point with regards to the Sangre Grande campus. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. Is that giving us more healthcare, or is that spreading it out? Now, I'm not against spreading out the healthcare so that it helps access, but I just want the proper perspective in the minds of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And Michaela Pandey, she more or less alluded to something similar. Opening another hospital without the necessary human, financial, and medical resources is like spinning top in mud, especially when the hospitals currently operating are not functioning efficiently. Well, now it's come out that protesters are demanding for the Children's Hospital in Couva use it as a children's hospital, its intended purpose. Now, first of all, I read a report about years ago that this hospital, half of the beds were for adults, so I don't know if that qualifies it as a children's hospital. But more importantly, a different facility would not necessarily make it better. Dr. Ford Khan is saying that the partnership had a plan to open a NICU hospital. I don't know if I've heard, maybe I'm wrong, I've never heard of a NICU hospital. Hospitals have a NICU. I've never heard of a whole hospital just for that. But either way, unless the investigations prove that it was the facilities and there's something fundamentally wrong with Port of Spain in general, then these points don't matter. Because I think it's a safe assumption that the same officials in the ministry will oversee this hospital, if it's a public hospital, right? And to some extent, the same pool of human resources will be what's available for this hospital. The same resources available to the public health system that's available to Port of Spain would be more or less what's available to any sort of children's or NICU hospital. And why do we think that the performance would change if we just change the location, assuming that the problem is not with the location? Because one of the mothers who's a nurse is basically saying how she felt other nurses treated her and executed their duties. She has questions about it. The Nursing Association, even if we don't want to say the nurses are partially to blame, they're saying that hospital administration, the medical director, the head of the unit, somebody with regards to authority to run this unit is most likely to blame. Somebody in HR, I don't know. That's not going to go away by just putting it in a different building. We see the same thing all the time with regards to the police service. Oh, they get a new unit, they slap a new Peter coat on it, they call it by a different name, and it doesn't change anything. Well, at the very least, if we're going to have those complaints, we should also think about it here. A different building in a different location isn't going to potentially change this outcome. Now we have to ask, and to some extent, I hope that at the very least the PAHO teams goes back into the past to determine if this is the only time that something like this has happened, and that doesn't just include the other 4 babies that the lawyers for the potential class action lawsuit have identified, but even before that, because again, we want to find out, is it the facilities? Is it how the allocation of resources from the ministries, health/finance? Is it how the individual hospitals being run? Is it how the NWRHA is being run? Is it the HR situation? Is it the attitude of the nurses? Maybe it's not, maybe it is. It's a high-stress environment. One nurse's eyewitness testimony is not, unfortunately, necessarily the be-all and end-all, but it should be looked into. So I think we're kind of missing the boat on this one, as it says on the screen. It's about transparency over what happened. A new hospital, a different hospital is not going to make the situation better. We're going to put the same doctors and the same nurses, and if necessary, they'll have the same supply shortages. There'll be the same conditions, just in a different space. Again, all of these things need to be looked into. So, the one thing that I could agree with the lawyers is, why not reveal all the records? What are you trying to hide? In this environment, the benefit of the doubt is not going to be given. I don't think it should be given for just about anything anymore. Because it seems as though that officials in various sectors of the public service take it for granted that they could ask for the benefit of the doubt and we'll just give it. Meanwhile, whenever anything bad happens, we never get a resolution that's satisfactory. Let's take a break. We'll switch gears when we welcome the ASP. Stay tuned.
Imagine a world where arguments don't exist. CICR is a full-service conflict resolution company that offers mediation training and workshops for all. In 2024, our 40-hour workshops are back, giving you all the tools you need to become a certified mediator in Trinidad and Tobago. Want to know more? Call us at 768-6778 or visit our website. Let's work together to make the world a better place.
Hello there and welcome to AM Prime on WESN Content Capital. Before we even start this repatriation and reintegration process, we've already failed, or are we doomed to fail?
You've got to invest in the institutions that you've established to carry out those sorts of core functions.
We now get into the regional updates to give you an understanding of what's happening across our neighboring islands.
We have available a number of films that are worth showing.
So it was day one when the French Revolution started to develop the concept of universal human rights.
What happened this time is unprecedented. It's one of the largest terrorist attacks in history.
Let's welcome Carl to the program. Carl is over there, next to Seth. Hello, Carl.
Silky anteater or pygmy anteater, and we have 2 of the 3 species of anteaters right here.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for, it's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Now you don't need to register nothing. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
They believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
Welcome back to Talking About, ladies and gentlemen. And under the veil of online threats to schools, and this is not the first time last week's threat, we continue something, I guess, which as a society and a nation, I don't know if we're necessarily ready to grapple with, but safety and security with regards to social media, with regards to our young people in social media. It's a dynamic topic. The ASP is here with me again this morning to speak about it. Good morning, ASP Ali.
Good morning, Sean. I hope you had a nice weekend.
It was all right.
Well, it was. And this topic continues to be on the forefront. I mean, we can't just drop it and say it is not real, because we have a lot of situations where social media and cybersecurity itself is on the forefront of, we're in technological age as the case may be, and these platforms are being utilized much more. Long ago, you realize people might get a phone call and make a threat in a school, and you get a phone call, right? It's no longer about a phone call anymore sometimes. So now you realize that in our most recent incident with respect to the school in the south, threats came via social media platforms, and messages went out to specific individuals and a lot of persons within the schools through phones, right? An investigation is being conducted into that. And it just shows the extent to which cybersecurity and social media and how it has been used. It can be used for positive communication as a means of communication, as well as in this case, used to commit crimes or add to the threat or disrupt society in that context. Right? So it's something where you have to keep looking at. And last week I keep on mentioning the issue of children and parents understanding how they use social media platforms. Right? Cyberbullying is something that when it happens online, it is not reported as much, because persons take that not because parents have not seen any physical injuries on a child, on their child, or anybody has a physical injury. It is not being reported the way it should be reported. But cyberbullying is a real, and it might be much more dangerous as opposed to the physical bullying in some instance, because that individual now is going through an entire phase psychological stress, the mental stress, the changes that in their own space. And now, because persons are doing cyberbullying like that, when you're on a group, let's say on a group chat, and persons share information and treat you like that in a group, and threaten you on a group chat or post negative comments on a group chat, everyone who has access to that chat or on that chat is in fact part and parcel of that situation. So now you are no longer, cyberbullying is no longer between you and I. Bullying is no longer between you and I. Everybody is part of it. So that individual has a greater pressure when everybody realizes that how this person is being spoken to, and this is where the extent towards the cyberbullying goes.
Well, one of the things I have to ask, because I continue with this topic with another colleague, Mark Anthony Peter, on Friday, and he was more looking at it from the perspective of an educator who also has a lot of younger students. He himself is younger, so he is a bit more of a similar perspective as those students. But to me, I do wonder, because one of the things is, you know, we had COVID. To some extent, we have to wonder to what if the nature of socializing, and I can't remember if I brought this up with you last week, it changed in part because of COVID. It might have accelerated. You know, I mean, we know that that's where the trend more or less was going, for better or worse. Everybody lamented, oh, kids today, they're only on their screens. But then we had a period where they were forced to only have their screens, and some of them were very young when that happened, so they might not necessarily know a different way. Even if they had 1 or 2 years in primary school, that's when you're 4, 5, 6, 7, you know, or the 4 or 5 years at a time, this is what they know. And I'm wondering if the situation has grown, and maybe the parents, because you would think parents now, as opposed to like my parents, are a bit more savvy with internet. But it seems as though they're not still completely aware of how far it could go, because it was in its infancy then. They themselves didn't necessarily experience what might be going on now. So is it that it's growing, that as the internet continues to grow and our dependency on it for better or worse continues to grow, these acts of cyberbullying, it's not like something, it's similar to bullying, yes, but like you said, these new technologies just change the dynamics so much that parents are just underestimating it and not realizing not only is it worse, but it's going further, and it's continuing to grow. Even as we speak, it might be getting worse and worse, you know, and reaching new levels, going down, right, on their children.
It is, and it's so true, because as you said, post-COVID, or pre-COVID, I should say, there was a lot of different things. Social media may not have been used to the extent that we expected it to be used in the future. Post-COVID changed that immediately, because in a short space of time we were forced to use it automatically. And that caused a lot of problems for a lot of persons, right? Now that we are already in it, we are trying to grapple with it in terms of getting to understand the context and the contents of it, and how dangerous utilizing the phone and the social media platforms. And then you have youths who are very technologically savvy, that can manipulate devices and platforms and social media platforms. And these are the type of individuals who maybe maybe some of the persons who would be putting threats out, using cyberbullying threats, sex texting, child pornography, or chain pictures on a cutting. So you have a group of, how I should say, a community of these individuals who understand social media to the extent that they know exactly what they want to do with it, and we have to get involved with these individuals are portraying it outside here. So when you have an advanced group who knows about this type of technology, social media platform, how to manage it, right, cybersecurity, when we believe it might be an adult in some situation, an adult or elderly individual, I mean adult, you know, a mature adult may be doing some of these things, then we have to be very careful, because it is not what we expect.
Yeah.
It's young, it's teenagers who are exploring this avenue.
Well, actually, after our previous talk, I found some recent cases. One of them was an adult male, right, young adult male, had online interactions with a 12-year-old girl who willingly went off with him, right? They went to the coast, they came back. I think, well, I don't know, no, they didn't come back. The parents eventually called the police. They used an app, a similar app to what you were saying with regards to how people should use social media to track their family members. And in this case, it worked to track down a minor to remove her from the gentleman's custody, if my memory serves correct. But yes, one could argue, because his defense lawyer is saying, oh, well, they were in a relationship and he didn't know that she was 12. Meanwhile, the father has gave an interview to the media house abroad. He was saying, well, she's 5'0", you know, she's very obviously a small child, right? Like, who are you fooling? But the flip side is, I think you're right. Like, to what extent did she understand who she was talking to and what he was leading her to do?
And there are a lot of predators outside there. And we continue to say sexual predators and predators of all different type. So this cyber space.
I have to ask, is it that we just underestimate how far they would go? Because it seems like something so beyond the norm.
It is.
Like, to be honest, I understand that it happens, but then hearing about the case where he willingly misled a 12-year-old, I think that's reasonable to say, and then, you know, took her somewhere to have a private relationship. We're not talking about like a 5-year age difference. We're talking about like a 10-year, and she is 6 years removed from adulthood.
So, in early years, when a young man wants to get involved or get involved with a young lady,
yes.
Right? Two things. He may want to use send a letter, discreetly get a letter across with write something in it, right? Or find a way to where she lives, you know, find some discreet way to meet the individual in that
Which,
context.
depending on the culture,
yeah,
is not a good thing.
It's not a good thing, but that is where that's how far I should say how far that is where it could have gone.
Yeah.
No,
because that was scandalous in its time.
But now, with the use of different devices, electronic devices, social media platforms, you don't have to be in close proximity to the individual. You share that interaction online. When your child is your child is at home, your child is at school, your child is anywhere your child is, right? That individual has an opportunity to link with and keep doing the fishing, as the case may be, and attracting that individual across. So it is no longer to say that your child is safe in your home physically, because they may be safe physically in your home, but it's not more physically in home anymore because of the fact that the use of the phone and social media platform and devices, electronic devices, that is where the risk is.
Now, the Department of Homeland Security is more or less seeing they have their own problems. 36 million cases reported, and like we see about similar situations in ICNTT, those are cases that they know of. And the head of Homeland Security is warning, like basically implying there could be more, we just don't know about it. But one of the things that they're doing is they have a campaign where they're getting people to give advice. One of the advices given was, be careful, video games, online gaming could be one avenue. And there's voice chat in that now. And some of these applications might have basically parental controls where you could either block voice communication or block certain aspects of communication, or you could limit it to maybe a friends list, which then a parent could monitor well, so-and-so is on the list, and I know all of them in real life. I met their parents, I met the individuals, but who is this? I don't know who this is, tell me who this is, right? So yes, the parent still has to be involved. Some of these lessons are like yesteryear. Don't talk to strangers. Parent has to know who the other parents are. They have to compare notes, so when both of them say they're sleeping over by each other's houses and they're going off to sneak off somewhere, they could catch them in the act. But one of the things is, as much as we could say that parents still have to do some of the basic jobs of parenting and be involved with their kids, they're not all aware of what's going on. Do we have people in TNT? Has the police been able to identify people to advise on the specifics?
We have our cyber and social media unit within police service have been engaging with other entities and sharing information on social media platforms and sharing through our platform. We have been having some of those seminars in schools and trying to educate the children from the context of the risk associated from a criminal perspective, right, as well as proper uses and some methods or some tips they can use to safeguard themselves utilizing social media platforms.
But what about the parents? Because one of the things that came out from America in the reports, one of the reports I saw was, you know, one of the experts warned, well, children are more savvy and tend to know how to hide these things.
But, so
they don't, you know, you know what it is like. Because I'm not supposed to do it, I want to do it.
You see, the thing about it is that we would engage with the schools, right, and we would speak to the schools. Some of the PTAs would have invited us in some of these things.
But do the parents participate?
But some of the parents feel embarrassed. Some people feel embarrassed that I am not so familiar with the devices. I mean, it is realistic.
Listen, I'm a young person that's on the internet almost my entire free time, right? Unless I'm out with friends or unless I'm watching TV, which is very rare now. And I know that I don't know everything. And for my older family members, I'm supposed to know everything. And I'm just like, why? This thing is so dynamic.
And that's what we have to keep understanding. It is changing. While we are trying to catch up with the current social media platform and the devices and how they operate, technology is advancing at this point in time. So while we are here, it is moving forward. Because at a speed.
At one point, it was only Facebook. And then we still have Facebook, but we also have Instagram. And we also have TikTok. And we also have Snapchat. And we also have other things that I didn't even know exists, right? But I want to just backtrack to the online threats. Because I actually think that the authorities, whether from the education ministry or the police, are in a little bit of a catch-22 with the threat itself. Because technically speaking, shutting down the school is not going to make the threat go away unless you just permanently keep the school shut down for an indefinite period of time. Am I correct on that? Because I think, yeah, maybe okay, you maybe could have shut it down for 2 days, but to some extent, the threat itself is still hanging in the air if it's serious.
And it is a threat from an online perspective.
Right.
So it can come at any point in time again. It's not a physical threat anymore.
Right.
Right. But you have to be. It has to be. It is treated as a threat.
Because the next thing is, one of the things that I thought of is, well, what if it's a prank, and then at some point, if students realize, ooh, if I threaten the school, they'll close it.
Well, no.
Yeah, you understand? Then I don't want to go to school tomorrow. Let me threaten, or I don't want to go to school, I have an exam next week, Monday. Let me threaten the school.
So that, even in that aspect of it, we would have had conversations in schools as to making threats, bomb threats and calling threats in this school, the risk associated in the criminal offense that leads to such a thing. Because we know that these things do happen, and it had happened in the past. Right, and
yeah, we haven't been bombed or haven't had a shooting yet.
Not bombed or the physical threats that was carried out, but the potential of a threat, right?
Has existed.
Yes,
we had other threats before.
People calling, persons calling to schools and say there's a bomb or X, Y, and Z, and the school where they're going through the safety protocols. But that in itself was intended to disrupt the school. And we had other institutions who got bomb threats and all continued to disrupt. But it just shows now that it is no longer about utilizing a handline,
because that
to
in the
send
past
threats.
trace.
Yes. So now threats are coming at different on the social media platforms. So they may even send an email threat, and that alone, that and all has some in-depth investigation and technical investigation to determine where is the source.
Because you have to go outside the country to
Yes.
get it.
So, but at the end of the day, you cannot say those threats are not real.
Right.
So you have to take it like that. So in this whole thing, the whole scenario, we have a lot of situations where we have children are exposed to several different things. So we talk about sharing of pornographic video, pictures and all of that, and under the Children's Act, that's a serious offense, right? They could be fined $30,000 or 10 years imprisonment. So it is in fact a real situation. And coming out of that now, we have this situation now where there is a program that the police service is also running through, a conflict resolution program. All right, let me just share with you. It started in April. And
this is for students, between students.
Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, in collaboration with conflict resolution groups, right? We have police officers involved in time where they go to schools and speak about certain areas. Now, when you have these type of threats and these type of issues, we have conflicts. And simple conflicts in school emanates towards cyberbullying.
Right.
So it is linked in the way that we have to deal with it. So it's a conflict. Because of that conflict, you have to know how to de-escalate that conflict and what is taking place. So it's the program. It's a caravan that will be launched. Some of my colleagues coming later in the month will be sharing in the program and the extent to which it is, and we'll bring them on it. Right. So they are now sharing in all our social media programs to get it running. So we are doing as much as we can, understanding technology and how it affects children, crime, resolving conflicts holistically, and what we can do within the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to alleviate some of these issues. Right? We continue to engage with other entities to treat with this issue, because the issue of dealing with children, managing conflicts, cyberbullying, sex texting, sharing of pornographic images, even sharing images of yourself online, the risk associated with that. It's a continuous messaging that we have to keep reinforcing on a regular basis with our platform, because some people do not believe it can happen to me. Only when it happens to you, then you realize that I didn't know when I sent it to Sean sent it to everybody else, and then it come back to me.
Why had to be me?
Well, it's usually person right here because Sean did it, right? So, and that is...
Somebody's going to clip that and I'm going to get in trouble. Anyway, yes, it's true. Young people, especially, I think, very much so, but not the only ones, but would think it won't happen to me.
Exactly.
Because it never had, so they never had to go through that experience of, oh gosh, bad things can happen to me. But we have to end things there. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we open the phone line. Stay tuned.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug.
You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe. Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God, so we kind of have to stalemate.
We'll focus on the woman who's being the victim, or the man who's being the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
Welcome back to Talking About, ladies and gentlemen. Now is the time we open the phone lines. We want to hear from you, the viewer. You could call and have your say on anything that we have spoken about. If you have any questions for the ASP, it's been a while. If you have any technical questions that you would like clarification on with regards to an interaction you had with a police officer or an interaction you might have with another citizen, you need not necessarily legal advice, but maybe advice on how to de-escalate or move forward with a situation, you could call and ask the ASP. Of course, I spoke on several topics. The ASP spoke about online issues that we have primarily with young people. But now we have our first caller. We'll get into some other things, but we have our first caller, Diego Martin, on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Mr. Paul. And this is my first question to the policeman, the superintendent. And I want to ask him direct. Has the police beefed up their human resources with respect to technology, in respect to cybercrime? And I'm asking him direct. In 2012, we had the Emailgate issue, and that was a major issue. That should have triggered a flag directly to the police service. Hey, look where we are. Where will we go? And you all, and I mean in the TTPS, should have invested in the human resource to mitigate things like that. 10 years after, a lot of schools have suffered from cyber attacks. A quarter of the school district had to close down Presentation College. So that is an issue I believe the TTPS has to address head on. The other question to you, Mr. Paul, and by extension to the whole of Trinidad, and more particularly to the government who brought a bill, a constitutional bill, to appoint a DCP. Mm-hmm. Why did we go down that route? But trying to circumvent scrutinizing it in Parliament. We don't want to have a DCP where 2 months after it's questionable and we can't remove that person because I didn't see that addressed. One of the points that the AG made is wasting parliamentary time. And I want to directly tell him what I think of it. Right now in Parliament, we have two issues I believe is wasting parliamentary time. You have one where an independent senator has brought a motion to amend the Commission of Inquiries Act. Why are we doing that now when we have a lot of deliverables from previous Commission of Inquiry and they are being mudballed? A couple of them, integrity in public life, the procurement legislation, etc. The other issue is the Commission of Inquiry into the Mosquito Creek crack, as they say, where we have spent many millions on that, and the commissioner who has been appointed said the government is wasting people's time. So here you have put it now into a joint select committee to do what? If you spend so much money and after 5 or 6 years you have got nowhere with it, you're creating bacchanal and using parliamentary time badly. So this is what I want to put into the public domain, where public government official must come with notarized statement. And if they can't come with notarized statement, and that is inclusive of cabinet, the AG, and the ministers, come with a notarized tongue, so we could basically accept and to say some extent they are bringing credible information. And according to this term, a notarized tongue. I'm going to have a nice morning.
Thank you, caller. I don't know if you want to respond first.
Well, the caller is right, but right now we have the cyber media and social media, cyber security and social media unit, where we did in fact recognize that it was need to have this unit established to deal with social media issues as well as cybercrime issues. So it's both units delimited. In any unit we have, because of the extent to which and the nature of this type of investigation, yes, the unit might need a little more, but it also brings to begs the question whether or not private organizations and any other organization, what is their level of security when it comes to cybersecurity? So they need to put their level of security in place. We keep talking about, before we keep having a conversation about the physical security of your businesses. No, it is no longer about the physical security alone. It's about cybersecurity. And the police service cannot treat with this entity alone by just simply saying that we have a unit that can investigate this entire thing, because an investigation of that nature, just like the Emailgate situation, took you out of the country, took you to another area, and had to get specific information from an organization that has a lot of paperwork to get involved in. So that is a serious consideration when you have to have cybersecurity. So it has been done, but the extent to which, and I can't say, I don't think if you could have one, or even if you have 100 officers in a unit like that nature, the challenges still will be there because of the type how cybersecurity
it will not always, two extra hands won't always make it more shorter, right? Yeah. But more importantly, I think is it safe for me to assume that there are other areas in the TTPS that could also use extra resources?
It is. In other areas.
Like it's not just that everywhere else has a glut of resources, and cybersecurity is like the red-headed stepchild left in the corner to fend for itself.
The social media unit, the social media and cybersecurity unit that we have that deals with these specific areas, it's a delicate investigation. Sometimes it's a lot, and we have specialists in the areas working.
It's one thing for a government and the authorities of this country to go to an entity of this country, within this country, a private entity, and say, I need information from you. And we have laws to say how we could request it of you and compel you if we could show that it's necessary. But it's another thing for us to try to then compel a foreign entity on foreign soil. We would have to go through someone else's government, and that just makes it more complicated, correct?
Yeah, and even investigating reports of or allegations of cybersecurity threats, even locally, you have to have some MOUs and particular requirements to go even to the banking sector, to other service providers within Trinidad and Tobago to get information from us. So it is a lot to investigate.
Now, Cole, I understand where you're coming from. I do think depending on how the resources are utilized, certain aspects could be beefed up with regards to monitoring, with regards to providing assistance, providing whatever preventative measures to help our various state agencies and private entities, although they themselves have their part to play, and usually whenever they have breaches, the first thing we ask is, did they do reasonable amount of work on their cybersecurity? First of all, the police can only support them on the back end, so much, right? But the main thing is resource allocation comes primarily from the Ministry of Finance, and then it trickles down, right, through the Ministry of National Security to the TTPS. And generally speaking, I think when it comes to complaints about investing resources, the first thing we have to look at is we have to ask the question and determine, I'm not saying this is a given, is the police being allocated enough resources? Is the police being allocated enough resources on an HR level? And similar to the situation with nurses, is enough being done to get enough technical experts in the field? And with cybersecurity, it might not just be blanket statement technical experts. There might be various subcategories that we ourselves don't even know about. And as the situation develops, we need to be able to develop the capacity. So it's complex, and it's unfortunately under the umbrella of government needs to make it happen. Not necessarily the police are going to just find money from a money tree somewhere. With regards to the wasting time, I'll say this. I think that the AG is right, it's wasting time. From my perspective, that the process, how it's practiced, might be compromised. It's supposed to have transparency, and it doesn't seem to have that transparency. It doesn't seem to have that level of independence from one aspect of Parliament. That's why you include both, right? It seems as though the Police Service Commission doesn't seemingly have that transparency. We can't take it in good faith that we just trust that everything is above board. That's why we want to have the process the way it is. Go through the steps. When you go through the steps, then we have less doubt. Doesn't remove all doubt, because again, how the process is practiced right now, we have a lot of questions. So removing the process does not necessarily fix the problem, in my opinion. It might fix the problem of your boss, but do we want another situation where we have an acting commissioner of police going on 6-month stints? We have a caller on the line, repeated 6-month stints. We have a caller on the line from Faizabad, I think. Good morning, caller, you on air?
Good morning, Sean. Good morning to the gentleman there. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago.
Morning.
Morning, sir. Okay, so we're talking about the cyber security and the investigative powers and their limitations. While I can understand that, but I think Google and all the other platforms would have certified that the email gate was a false document. Is that correct, sir? Are you there with me?
Was Emailgate false?
Yes.
Was it certified false? I'm not sure if it was certified false.
Okay, yes. Well, I can tell you, I can help you, because there were a lot of correspondences with respect to that from various platforms. What I am thinking is that the police now should have hauled Dr. Rowley and forced him to give the information as to where he got that and try to find out where it was generated from. You see, but the slap on the wrist thing to the politicians by not holding them accountable. Similarly to the fiasco with Gary Griffith. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
This is the thing that creates the confusion in the society, like the police team. They have fear for going after the politicians. Look how many allegations were made against Munilal and company. Up to this day, nothing came out of that 9 years after. Is the police incapacitated in some way? Are they being restricted by certain powers? Are they favoring the politicians? And I suspect that.
Oh, okay, caller. We have another caller waiting. Thank you. I'll just say this. I don't know if I necessarily trust social media companies at their word, because, I mean, in the last couple of years, and I think even relatively recently, if not quite recently, they are before Congress having to apologize for things and explain away things. But I do get your point. I do think that regardless, maybe the authority should have gone to Dr. Keith Rowley, then opposition leader, and say, well, what are your sources? These are serious allegations. If you have evidence, bring it forward to try to potentially put a lid on it one way or the other. I don't have a dog in the race. I'm just saying yes. Perhaps his sources should also have been looked into more closely if they were not. We have a caller from Chaguanas. Last call for the day. Good morning, caller. You're on air.
Good day, gentlemen.
Morning, morning.
Morning, sir.
You're talking about the problems we have in all over Trinidad, especially like those babies who died. And the problem is, I doubt we will ever find out the reason why. Because when I was in the public service, anything go wrong, you immediately do an investigation. You don't wait on the minister or anybody. By the time the minister called, you could have given an idea what went wrong. But most importantly is how you intend to deal with it and prevent further incidents. And the key to all this was all government agencies carrying out their duties to the best of their ability. Unfortunately, you have a guest here who in the past have given reasons why one should not enforce the law. And that is a very dangerous position. If you see a law that is not proper, then one is supposed to make recommendations as to how it should be amended. Right? And all these would be recorded in your annual administrative report. So people will know the reasons why you are doing things. And how you will know an agency is doing their job is by the things that are obvious to you. If you look at the police force view, you see people parking all over Port State where you're not supposed to, and nothing is done, or the Eastern Main Road. And you go and you see, look over Chaguanas police station. There was set a sign on the road marked no parking, and it always jam-packed with people parking. It reaches the stage now where the derelict vehicles, they're parking it on the road. And the cause for this is all government agencies supposed to work together. Take a prime example with WASA. WASA used to service all government properties. Now you have WASA there, but government giving out things in contract. I remember in Moncton there you had a toilet there that was out of commission for about 6 months. Right? And this is in a hospital. Right? And I could go on for the next hour and a half. I don't think you have that time to unless you have any questions. The problem is governance.
Yes, Professor, I agree with you. Thank you so much for that. Unfortunately, yes, he does have a point. Now, I don't know. I won't say you're responsible for it.
I'm not arguing with the professor. The caller is right. The issue is, and in his interpretation, he might say that I am saying and why we cannot enforce the laws.
Yeah.
I was just highlighting the challenges with enforcing the number of laws that is on our books. And if it's continuously enforcing the number of laws and the impact of these laws and enforcement of these laws. I am all for enforcing the laws. I'm comfortable with the fact that we have to enforce the laws. But when you look at them, sometimes I'm of the opinion that there needs to be a revisit in our current environment, whether or not the law, these specific laws on the books, even in a motor vehicle and road traffic act where we talk about.
All right, we're over time, but we have Mr. San Fernando. So I'll take your call, Mr. San Fernando. Good morning. You'll have to be very quick. Morning, morning.
Morning, sir.
You know, Sean, you were talking about cybersecurity. And my issue is, if we want more cybersecurity in the country, or a more secure cybersecurity environment, then we have to understand that we have to allow intrusion. We have to allow intrusion if we want more cybersecurity, and that's the conundrum. People don't want more intrusion, but they want more cybersecurity. That is our issue. Because if I would like people to go through the legal text when they have on the WhatsApp and all the other apps that they have, and understand all that they have given up when they use these platforms. And this is the same thing we want the police to have.
Yeah, yeah.
But we want the police to enforce, but we don't want the police to have that same access. Or we don't want the security forces to have the same access. That is my point. Have a good day.
Thank you, caller. That's a good point. You need access in order to get the information. That's one of the issues that even the American government had with social media platforms, right? Allegations of spying notwithstanding. The fears of social media by a lot of people, including people in Trinidad. Some of my friends, they're very much afraid of this sort of thing.
And I like what the caller bring out, because it also highlights the educational risk that we face, or the lack of education with social media platform, because as I say,
but it's not just limited to social media. On some level, more security could be had at the cost of freedoms, whether online or in real life.
When you join a platform, just like everything else, you make a contract.
Yeah.
And even in the context of contracts, sometimes you don't really define lines. As I say, they really define prints. When you go on and download an app, and the app say privacy, access all, allow this app to access all your phones and all your data, all the pictures,
your
all the images, and all that.
your everything, your contact list.
And you really just go and click accept. You really don't know who is the back end of this platform.
One of the things is,
so you're giving up. So you give up all that, and that is where the challenge continues to be with cyber security and cyber awareness and the use of social media platforms. That the youths of today, not even worried about it.
Yeah.
So they just use platforms because what the platform has is what they want. The back end, the responsibility, or what you just give up, they don't worry about that, and the risk associated with it afterwards.
Now the thing is, from what I understand, in Europe you have to opt in. In the US, you have to opt out, meaning they will automatically take your data and use it, and you have to affirmatively tell them, no, I don't want you to do that. Unfortunately, in the US, it's legal for businesses that take personal information and give it to others as a marketing sales thing. I will give out contact information of random citizens to various marketing firms, right? And that's legal, right? What do our laws say? I don't even know if our law says anything on that with regards to the opt-in or opt-out, with regards to how our private information on social media and the internet can be used, right? Our laws need updating. The professor is right with regards to the fact that, look, I have an issue with informal situations, and I think both the culture of both policing and the public and how we perceive policing should be is skewed when we have all of these informal arrangements that we don't enforce this law, we don't enforce that law, we don't enforce the other law. And it should be cleaned up, because I do agree with the ASP stance. On some level, the public will riot if they enforce certain laws, and people will cry foul and constitutional reform and all kind of thing. But it should be updated. It shouldn't just be left as it is. And I guess I'll just leave it there. Hopefully we will find out the truth of what happened to those in Port of Spain NICU. But if not, I think, I said it last week as well, Professor, annual administrative reports. We need more transparency in the matter. Folks, it's been a long show. We're more or less over time. If we want to have a great nation, if we want TNT to rise from wherever it is we reach, then we need to do it ourselves. Make today a good day, as my co-host always says. If we still believe in TNT, we do. That's why we're still here. Remember your allegiance to the Republic. We will see you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN.
The newest book is here, Closer to the Church, the debut novel by author and former mayor Louis Lee Singh. Available at all the home store branches, Barataria, West Mall, Shogunas and C3 San Fernando. Paper-based bookshop 10 Nook Avenue St. Anne's, WESN 30A Gattaca Street Woodbrook, Metropolitan Bookshop Area Peter Avenue Woodbrook, and all RIK bookstores nationwide. Available online as paperback on Amazon.com and Kindle for e-readers. For more info, call 628-5835 or 389-6504. Also available from author Louis Lee Singh, I Used to Live in Heaven, Letters to My Granddaughters, and Local Government in Trinidad, Conspiracy Against the People. FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
Years of international surrealism. We also spoke to the people who are putting together a similar and I think larger exhibition for here in Paris. That's slated for September this year, and that's set to be pretty important in the art world.
All right, Olivia, well, if anybody can't make it to that show in Brussels, nor indeed that one coming up here in Paris, your France in Focus programme is actually on right now. It's delving deeper into the world of surrealism. Check it out.
There's day-to-day reality, and then there's superior reality. That's what André Breton's Surrealist Manifesto was aiming for, an artistic and spiritual revolution.
This text was explosive, a poetic grenade.
Surrealism rejects reason, logic, and even language, all of which its acolytes believed obscured deeper, more mystical truths.
Le surréalisme est avant tout un mouvement de libération de la poésie.
A dive into the subconscious that produced some of the 20th century's most avant-garde and troubling works of art.
Surrealism is the victory of the imagination.
100 years on, its legacy still infuses art and culture. Paying tribute to French poet Guillaume Apollinaire, credited by many as the inventor of the term surrealism, the manifesto establishes the main principles of a movement that was to stretch into the 20th century.
The poet André Breton wrote the Surrealist Manifesto in 1924. Initially, it was meant to be the preface for a collection of poems. Then he made it a standalone text, and it became a sort of trigger for a movement that spread across Europe and eventually across the globe.
In the early 1920s, this Parisian cafe was a regular haunt for artists, the Closerie des Lilas. It's where Breton and the founder of Dadaism, Tristan Tzara, had an argument and Surrealism was born. The movement was heavily influenced by the ideas in Freudian psychoanalysis, which Breton and fellow poet Louis Aragon had recently discovered.
In France, it was artists and poets who were the first ones to introduce the concept of psychoanalysis, and it was via surrealists like Breton and Aragon that its ideas were discussed. They both came from a medical background, but they turned to the arts, to revolution even. They were defectors.
The manifesto was written in the wake of the First World War. André Breton saw the bloodbath up close and observed the mental torment of the wounded soldiers he treated.
Breton was called up in 1915, and because of his time at medical school, he was sent to hospitals. He was in various barracks, but we do know that during one of the major offenses in the Somme, he served as a stretcher bearer, so he saw those heaps of dead bodies piled high.
A rejection of the folly of war, Surrealism was also influenced by 19th century symbolist painting and shared some of the nonsensical features of Dadaism. One of the nascent movement's central ideas was automatism, a practice Breton developed with fellow poet Philippe Suppot.
On ne pourra comprendre le surréalisme que si on se met dans la place de jeunes gens qui veulent absolument se révolter et en même temps créer une atmosphère poétique nouvelle.
Their collaborative text, The Magnetic Fields, spearheaded automatic writing. It aimed to suppress the artist's consciousness during the creative process.
How can you transpose that idea to a visual format? It took artists a few years to work it out. In the end, it was Max Ernst, the German artist, who found a way to produce art that was not driven by reason. That's how he invented the frottage technique. It involved laying paper over an old wooden board, rubbing on the paper and seeing forests and monsters appear.
The movement had a double mission, to establish a new aesthetic and bring about the overthrow of oppressive structures like capitalism.
Surrealism has always had two main pillars. On the one hand, it refers to Karl Marx's slogan, change the world, that is, take action.